If you've ever stood inside the remains of an old European village, the kind that endured Viking raids, brutal winters, famine, and centuries of storms, you may have noticed something unsettling. The stone walls are cracked, roofs have long collapsed. Yet some of the wooden beams, especially those near the ground, are still solid. Not soft, not crumbling, still doing their job hundreds of years later. That sight raises a question modern builders and historians alike struggle to answer. How did medieval people, without pressure-treated lumber, chemical preservatives or waterproof membranes, build wooden structures that resisted rot for generations? This wasn't luck, folklore, or superstition. It was a system built on hard-earned observation, survival logic, and a deep understanding of nature. In this guide, we're uncovering the medieval anti-rot method that allowed wood to outlast stone, and why it still works today for homesteads, off-grid shelters, and survival structures. Before we dive in, if you value real history, practical survival knowledge, and the forgotten skills that kept people alive long before modern convenience, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who appreciates the old ways, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Warcraft Survival. Your support keeps this channel alive and helps preserve knowledge that time nearly erased. Now let's get into the real lessons. In medieval Europe, timber wasn't just a building material, it was survival itself. Homes, barns, fortifications, tools, carts, bridges, and even defences against invaders depended on wood. But medieval builders understood something many modern builders ignore. Wood is only weak when it's treated incorrectly. The first step in preventing rot began long before a beam ever touched a structure. It started in the forest. Medieval craftsmen harvested trees in winter during dormancy, when sap flow was at its lowest. You see, sap is rich in sugars and moisture, exactly what fungi, insects, and bacteria need to thrive. By felling trees in the coldest months, builders remove much of the biological fuel that causes decay. This simple seasonal choice dramatically extended the life of the wood. For anyone cutting their own timber today, late winter harvesting remains one of the most effective preservation techniques available, requiring no chemicals and no cost. Once felled, the timber was never rushed into construction. Medieval builders understood that how wood dries determines how long it survives. Rapid drying causes internal stress, cracking and moisture cycling that invites decay. Instead, beams were slowly seasoned under covered, well-ventilated shelters. They were protected from rain and harsh sun, but never sealed away from airflow. This slow, controlled drying stabilized internal moisture levels, reducing seasonal expansion and contraction. Wood that remains dimensionally stable is far less likely to trap moisture, and fungi cannot easily colonize what stays consistent. Modern builders can replicate this by stacking lumber with spacers, covering only the top and allowing months or even years for proper seasoning. You know, one of the most overlooked medieval techniques was the controlled use of fire. Long before modern wood treatments existed, builders would lightly char the ends of posts and beams that were destined for ground contact. This wasn't really about burning the wood, but more about transforming its surface. The charred layer created a carbon barrier that repelled insects, resisted moisture absorption, and, well, even inhibited microbial growth. Archaeological evidence from Scandinavia, the British Isles, and Central Europe shows charred post ends still intact after centuries underground. Today, this method remains incredibly effective. A controlled flame, careful attention, and a few minutes of work can dramatically extend the life of any ground contact beam. Medieval builders were also relentless about keeping wood away from standing water. They knew, that decay requires prolonged moisture, and so they designed structures specifically to eliminate it. Posts were, rarely buried directly in soil. Sill beams rested on stone foundations. Drainage layers of gravel, sand, or compacted rock made sure water flowed away instead of pooling. When burial was unavoidable, water was given an escape path. This design logic explains why so many timber-framed buildings still stand across Europe. For modern survival structures, elevating posts on stone or concrete blocks, or using deep gravel bases remains one of the most effective defences against rot. Airflow was the final and often invisible layer of protection. Medieval buildings were never airtight. Raised floors, open eaves, vented walls, and loose-fitting boards allowed structures to breathe. Moisture never lingered long enough to cause damage. Stagnant air, not age, is the true enemy of wood. Today's sheds, coops and off-grid cabins often fail because they, trap humidity. Designing for cross-ventilation and natural airflow honestly does more to preserve wood than most modern sealants ever could. What many people call medieval wood magic was never magic at all. It was physics, biology, and survival-driven craftsmanship working together. These builders had no room for error. If a structure failed, people froze, starved, or lost everything. That pressure forged systems that still outperform many modern shortcuts. Whether you're restoring old timber, building a homestead, or preparing for off-grid living, these methods remain as relevant today as they were 1,000 years ago. If this guide helped deepen your understanding of real historical survival knowledge, subscribe to Warcraft Survival, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and help keep the old ways alive. Knowledge like this only survives when it's passed on. On-screen text, watermark text to be displayed throughout the video.